We're on. We're on. I want to change the view so I can see us both here. Boom. There we go. I don't know if that changes for everybody else, but
No, changes
Did
for
you-
you.
did it change for you? No.
No.
You can still see the same.
I can still see the same.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, welcome everybody to the last Friday in August. A lot has happened. Not just today. We've had a bit of a dumpster fire here at the Hart Investment Group, just from nothing major that would affect anything. I should lead off and say that.
Yep.
That's the great thing about right now, right? If we have Ben had a major computer failure, but because everything that's managed is managed by apps, we just had to do a quick. He came over to my place, took my computer. I went downtown, grabbed another laptop. So all this, nothing is ever really at risk as far as that's concerned. So that's great.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's been a day, but it's been great. Busy week.
Mm-hmm.
Couple things I just want to lead off with. I'm just gonna get right into some housekeeping items. I'm not sure how many people saw, but we sent out a kind of official welcome to Joy. I know she's been around for about a month now, but mostly just getting trained and getting established in the branch and whatnot. So that's great. So we sent out one, but it's part of a bigger thing that we've been working on as far as having an email system that can be operated by anybody in the team, not just Ben. Because as of right now, like Ben sends out I create all the things, Ben sends them out. Because that's the way it's always worked for him. But there's obviously a more efficient way. We want to keep him doing the most important things. So we've now put an email system in place where we can just select which emails go to who. So rather than it coming from Ben Hart, it now comes from Hart Investment Group. So if you did not see the email that went out yesterday, we knew that would happen. It's likely in your junk mail because sometimes these mass email, I shouldn't call it mass email, these email distribution softwares, they get caught up in some spam filters. So if you have a chance, maybe just if you don't remember seeing that, just go into your spam filter your junk mail, or if you're using Gmail, it can be under your promotions tab, and maybe just move it to the safe folder. If you're not sure how to do that, just Google it or YouTube it, or I could even help you next week if you need. You could give me a call and I could help you get that done. But it's this is how we're going to manage all of our bulk emails. So, for example, when we send out these links, we can actually set them to go automatically at a certain time. And even with the recording after as well, I can set all those up so they'll automatically go, but it's important that everybody puts those to safe. Okay, so I think what we're going to do in the next couple weeks is we're going to send it both ways, so people don't miss out. As far as these links are concerned, I think that's important, at least for probably the next couple of weeks, if not longer, just to get everybody kind of making sure that they're receiving the dailies as well, for example. That's all going to be managed that way as well eventually. So awesome. It's awesome. We're excited. It's true. It's a change, which is scary for everybody like them, but it's definitely more efficient, and we'll be better off for sure.
Yes.
All right, enough about email. Nobody cares about that. Let's get on about what happened this week. What happened in the market? It's been a busy, big week in the markets.
I mean, I think so. The last few in the news, definitely. Obviously, there's been lots of news, I guess, this week. Today was really focused on Jackson Hole, which was Powell's big speech. I think there was a lot of pressure, market related, leading up to that. So he spoke today. Leading up these last couple of days, there's been a lot of kind of protection buying into the market. So, put buying, like a lot of, I guess, concern, caution about what he was going to say, what he would potentially say. And so I think he had a market really heavily positioned for, some kind of major announcement today. And we didn't really get a major announcement today. And he said, essentially, status quo. If the economy continues on the right path, so to speak, he said they could potentially start the taper this year. So I think the market was, concerned about if he said, well, we'll start the taper next month. If we said we start the taper next month, and again, the taper is just right now, they're buying $120 billion a month of bonds, mortgages, high yield, treasury bonds, all those kinds of things. And the taper is reducing that amount. And so, he's tied to taper once in 2018. They tapered for about 6 months. Then in December of 18, he tapered one too many bonds. Market dropped 15%, 20% within weeks, and then he had to reverse course and increase it again. So this would be, I guess, the fourth time in modern history, or at least in the last 25 years, where they've tried this taper. And every time that they've tapered, they've gone too far and had to spend more on the other side of this. So essentially, though, the market today was like, okay, nothing's happening. We're not going to taper unless the economic numbers get better in the back half of this year. And so it's kind of a sigh of relief. And you saw really kind of all asset classes move higher in the last kind of 4 or 5 hours of trading today.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe
So-
just
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
maybe just explain just a bit in a bit more detail what the taper is
Mhm.
exactly, because we did have a couple of questions about that after the call last time. So
That's
the
true.
taper was they buy less of the mortgages and the bonds.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So basically, right now, the interest rates across the curve for the U.S. government bonds, like just from a simplistic perspective, is just, typically when we talk about the overnight rate, that's the short-term bond rate. So that's where all variable assets kind of price off that short-term bond rate. Then as you go out 2 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years, obviously there's a bit of a yield curve, so it moves up the curve. And so what the central bank has done is they're buying different tranches along that curve in order to keep interest rates depressed, really. And so the fear is that when they stop buying those bonds, that yields are going to move higher. I guess that's a fear. Historically, when they've actually started to taper, yields have gone down. But right now, the market in each time they've talked about taper, there's this fear that rates are going to run away because the central bank's no longer intervening in that market. So there's a bit of a fear with that. And so, I think we talked about mortgages a bit the last couple of times. The U.S. government, central bank is buying, they own presently 40% of the mortgage market. And right now they're buying 1% per month of mortgages issued. So they're owning a majority chunk of that mortgage market. And there's a fear again, hang on a sec, if they pull back from supporting that mortgage market, is the housing market going to crash in the US like we saw in 2008? And so, within the housing, all those big banks have started to repackage again. We're getting credit default swaps, we're getting leverage loans, CDOs, and they've started to repackage this debt again. But there's a fear on those many different levels that if the biggest buyer of all of these bonds leave the market, what happens to that buyer of last resort? And that buyer of last resort, because it's been the government the last couple of years or decades, there's been comfort from everybody else around it that says we can buy it as long as the government's there.
Gotcha.
And so they're not going to, Bullard last week, which we talked about a little bit, is he said he wants them to exit the market completely. So to go from 120 billion a month to zero, like that would be catastrophe. Like the market would implode in a day if they did that.
Yeah, but that's not likely going to happen, is it?
I'd say a 0% chance.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, just if anybody has any questions about any of that or anything else as we go here, if you had something that you came in with that you wanted to ask, certainly put that in the question in the Q&A at the bottom or the chat, or raise your hand and you can verbally do it as well. All right, so what anything in the portfolios this past week that's of note?
So I think I didn't do too much this week, just trimmed a little bit of Twitter and added to real estate XLRE. And generally, besides that, nothing material. What we saw today was, some of those names. I think I'd mentioned that I'd exited the small cap index, but kept some small cap names. So I saw some small cap names really move today, like Pure Cycle's up 10% and Wrecker Systems is up 15%. Some of those smaller names that I've kept in the portfolios really moved today. Ouster and Blade and things like that. So those really moved, which is nice to see. So, I guess I'm looking at some of these things that I've kept in the portfolio with the view that we may get a resurgence here. Of some of these names, at least short term, while the pressure's off, with Powell essentially saying we're on the sidelines. Those have started to move well. So not a lot of material changes this week, but some of the names really moved. And I've been kind of pounding the table, I guess, the last couple of weeks on the miners. And today you see a pretty reasonable move in gold, up about $30 an ounce. And of course, some of these stocks are up 5, 6, 7%, with the day. So I continue to be optimistic that there's some material upside with these names. And these silver miners that I've mentioned, Coeur d'Alene, Hecla before, are trading as cheap as they ever have historically. So, if you got some momentum to gold, I think you could see these things go up 4 or 5 times.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
I guess, other things from the week though, too, obviously we saw with Afghanistan was kind of the big major political news story of the week, that grabbed everyone's attention. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. A lot of negative press around how Biden's handled that the last couple of days. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that progresses, but nothing good coming out of that.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And obviously we creep closer to the Canadian election here, and there hasn't been like, how close are we? It's what, 2 weeks?
September 20th. Yeah,
3
so
weeks?
it's been pretty quiet. I think the only
Yeah.
thing really of note was that yesterday Trudeau talked about raising corporate taxes, moving the corporate tax rate up to 18%. So he had a reasonable sell-off in the Canadian banks yesterday, and the Canadian banks are again soft today in a strong market. So I think there's some concern about the Liberals talking about raising taxes. I'm a bit surprised actually coming into this that's the tact, but they're playing to their base, and I think hoping that helps. But raising corporate taxes isn't good historically very good for your economy, especially if you're trying to attract corporations and grow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else from the news this week that grabbed your attention before we get on to what's going on next week?
No, I think as I look at, I follow a lot of the kind of the news stories, and one of the things I continue to use is Twitter, and lots of people use Twitter because then you get to sort who you can watch and listen to. And I have a pretty reasonable mix of people I like and people I hate, because you got to see both angles on it. But I think that the one thing that continues to play out right now is COVID and the Delta variant. And so as you look around the world, hospitalizations are rising in most places. The US is continuing to have hospitalizations rise as the Delta variant comes and plays through. And people, you can still get COVID if you've been vaccinated. So this, I think, continues to be an overhang and a drag. And there's pockets in the world. We saw Australians were rioting in the streets. Like it's hard to believe how some of all these different places are handling things. And I think that continues to play a major role. And we've seen this kind of back to work battle that corporations are having with individuals. I think we saw all the banks come out with mandatory vaccination, and trying to make everybody come back into the office. So, we got a pretty material political unrest and it's a lot of things happening that could play a part in what's happening with the economy and with the markets.
Are we gonna riot if the bank tries to make us go back? Hey,
Sure.
we're just cozy here in our basements. Hey,
Yeah, exactly.
just be you and I out there with our picket signs. 50 O'Connor.
But look, people are really fighting it. We've had lots of conversations with clients and others that there is a big group of people that don't want to get vaccinated. I talked to somebody that works high up in Health Canada, and they have a number of people that don't want to get vaccinated, and they work in Health Canada, particularly around what the vaccinations and things like that. So like these things will continue to cause tension and isn't great for the culture, and for typically isn't great for profitability for businesses.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The way that I've always seen it, both of us are double vaccinated, but the way I was seeing it is you're going to require it regardless of I believe in it or not, right? I mean, you're going to require it to travel. You're going to need to require it to coach any kind of sports. Like there's going to go to the office. Like there's going to be, it'll be interesting the separation of people that do and don't have it, what the rules and restrictions are for both sides for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we digress. This is
We do.
COVID.
I know it continues to be part
COVID
of it,
update.
I actually thought it would be more part of the elections than it has been right now. It's actually been quite quiet on that front, but we'll see how things play out. I mean, Trudeau's obviously got lots on the go with Afghanistan as well. I mean, Canada continues to be part of the efforts there too, and so I think that'll continue to play a major part politically in the world. But the markets seem to not care about that from a war footing perspective. So I would say that's interesting that I guess they've said 20 years. What if we're there another 20? It's not going to have an impact into anything else. So I think they'd be more concerned if it was a uprising somewhere else, a new one that they decided to put more troops involved in.
Right. Okay. Now that we've finished the CNN version of this episode, why don't we get into what you got going on for next week?
Sure. Yeah. So the economic numbers continue to be the thing that we follow here, and we've been kind of going ebbing and flowing between this view that we're going to see slowing growth and slowing inflation. Then we had inflation running a bit hotter than usual and growth slowing. So now the data says maybe we get a quick peak, maybe a couple of weeks of what we saw in kind of January, February, which would be that kind of that reflation trade, which is that kind of quad two, where like you get commodities run again, US dollar weakness as Powell's kind of out of the way for a couple of months. So I'm going to see it was today just a resetting of everyone's positions, because you had a lot of like the option market played a major role, I think, in what happened today. So I'm going to look and see how things trade next week and say, was this just a reflattening of positions, or do we actually have a bit of momentum to a trade on some of these things where, if we get, like I say, we get a small cap up 10% today, is there another 20, 30, 40% move in these things before we move on? And so I'd be paying attention to that, because it doesn't make a lot of sense today that we see stocks up, bonds up, gold up, crypto up, like everything moving up together. Typically that's a flattening of positions that drives this kind of movement. So I'll be looking to see, is there follow through with this, or is it just temporary? Because the economic data still says GDP is slowing. Inflation still elevated, but also slowing. Let's see how things play out. And so, hence the move today or this week with adding to real estate, because I do think we are in that slowing growth, elevated inflation, which continues to be quite positive for gold as the primary asset class. But let's see what the follow through brings out next week.
Anybody have any questions? Don't be afraid. If you have any questions about anything we talked about or anything that's been on your mind. Okay, just as we wrap up here, what do you have anything else you want to talk about before we move on?
So I'd say just a couple of things. If anybody is interested in Powell, that is put out there. Like you can go to the Federal Reserve website and watch the video back. He does speak, put up a couple of charts on their view and what they're thinking about. Now that'd be a pretty boring 25 minutes for you, but if you are interested in seeing what he said, it wasn't anything material. He's quite optimistic about the jobs number, and he seemed to be quite positive that the most recent jobs report, 832,000 new jobs, 800,000 were service oriented. I was a bit surprised that he thought that was a positive, because those jobs tend to be transitory, like his inflation. So like
Ba-boom. Little zinger there.
yeah, so that's not the high quality jobs. So he seemed to be indicating that he thought it was high quality jobs. It's worth a quick peruse if you're interested in hearing what he has to say. But market interpreted as positive, that they'll only go if the economy continues to grow, and that's probably not until December now.
All right. Great. Well, I think that sums it up. Second last weekend of summer.
That's it.
Kids go back to school. I always thought, like, this feels like our new year, the parents' new year, right? Happy New Year, Labor Day.
Yes.
Right? Kids go back to school. Everybody's excited. New beginnings.
Yes.
That type of thing. We're excited to ramp up for the new year. That's
the new year, eh?
for sure.
So what are your kids? What grades are your kids going into this year?
12.
Wow.
So we got one graduating high school this year, 10 and 6.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah. It's exciting.
You?
Mine are 4, 6, and 8. 4, 6, and 8.
Oh, so you got a graduate this year too.
Yeah, going to high school.
Going to high school. Well, that's your first one going to high school. That's nice. You get to battle all those demons through high school.
Can't wait. No,
it's fun.
This is the boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got two girls on the way, so
yeah,
it's gonna happen at some point too.
Exactly.
All right. Well, enjoy your week. Hockey tryouts start for everybody this weekend. So Ben and I will both be in the rinks if you're looking for us. So come to the Bell Sunsplex if anything's urgent.
We'll be there.
We'll be there the entire weekend.
Exactly.
Well, I will be anyway. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.